Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melie, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. Today, we are going all in on what I think is one of the most misunderstood things in the world of healing, growth, and starting over, and that is resilience. Now, when I say resilience, I do not mean that glossy Instagram version of strength. You know the one. You see this flawless woman holding a coffee mug that says, "Still rising," she's got a fresh blowout, she's somehow glowing even in the ashes. Nope, this is not what we're talking about. Today's episode is about the real kind of resilience. The one that looks like crying on the living room floor one night and then leading worship the next. Who could that be about? The kind that doesn't feel like strength, but it actually is. The kind that you don't inherit, you build. Because here is the truth. Resilience is not a personality trait, it's a practice. I'm going to say that again. Resilience is not a personality trait, it's a practice. It's not something that you either have or you don't. It's something that you choose over and over again. And let me tell you, it is not always pretty. And it's absolutely not always linear either. It's not Instagrammable all the time, but it is real. It is powerful, and it is absolutely possible for you. So I remember when I went to this prayer class at my church early on in my healing journey from my divorce. And as I was talking with my table group, we were talking about life, and we were asked to do this prayer exercise with one another where we just, if an image came to us about the person that we were sitting with, we were to tell them about it. So this woman that I was partnered with in this exercise said she had this image of me as being strong like a tree or a wall. She said in her mind she saw it as this quiet version of strength. And in that moment in time, I was really going through it. I felt like I was barely keeping it all together. And yet that image she painted really stuck with me. Because I ended up realizing the fact that I was even going out and about and trying to do things meant that I was strong. Because true strength is not looking like you have it all together. It's getting back up again and again. Which brings me to my next point. What does it usually mean when we hear someone say, "Oh, that person is so strong"? Does that imply like a particular, personality? Is that something that someone either has or they don't? I believe we're sold this lie early on, that resilience belongs to only certain kinds of people. And those kinds of people are the tough ones, the ones who bounce back, the ones who don't cry in public, they don't fall apart, they don't get bitter. They're labeled strong, usually early on, and the rest of us, well, we're just sensitive, emotional, or struggling. But what I've learned is that resilience actually has nothing to do with your personality type. You can be both sensitive and resilient. You can be introverted and resilient. And you can fall apart and still be resilient. Let's bring in a little brain science here because I love to do that. So in neuroscience, we talk about this idea of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change, adapt, and rewire based on what it experiences over time, which means that you are not stuck with a default setting. Your brain changes through repetition, reflection, and experience. Resilience isn't about toughing it out. It's about training your brain to respond to challenges with courage, creativity, and curiosity. And that does not come from being born with it. It comes from walking through hard things and choosing to keep learning, keep loving, and keep leaning on grace. Time and time again in my life, particularly during the years when I was married, I felt pressure to not be emotional, to not be sensitive, to not show my feelings. And when you get pressured to be that way for long enough, sometimes you will resort to trying really hard not to be an emotional person. And I remember at one point in my life, it was about 10 years ago, I was sitting in my therapist's office and he commented on how basically stoic I was. He told me that it was strange how I showed no emotion because I was talking about really emotional things with him and yet I was showing nothing. He challenged me because he didn't believe that that was the real me. And I realized in that moment that I had tried to become someone I wasn't, and that had caused me to basically numb out. But when I allowed myself to be who I really was, to not only feel things deeply, because trust me, I never stopped feeling things deeply at that time, but I was just hiding the expression of it. But when I let myself not only feel things deeply, but also express them, that was when I was able to step into my true strength and my resilience. And here's something that I didn't realize until I was flat out face down in a spiritual low point. Resilience isn't just mental or emotional, it is also deeply spiritual. The Bible is full of stories of people who practiced resilience, not through sheer grit, but through faith. Think about Joseph in the pit, in the prison, in the palace. Think about Ruth when she walked forward into uncertainty. What about Paul, who was shipwrecked, his life was in danger, and he was still preaching? And Sarah, who was having such a hard time believing the promises that God had for her, and then finds out that she's pregnant after all those years. And one that I really recently was thinking about a lot because we studied this in my women's ministry, but Esther, who was basically human trafficked, and then found herself being the only person in a position of power who could save her people. And of course, Jesus, in the garden, in the wilderness, on the cross. Resilience is faith with legs. It's belief that walks through the fire. James chapter 1 says, "Consider it pure joy when you face trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Romans 5 tells us that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. And that is not an instant process. It's not a sexy one either. That takes practice. In your spiritual life, resilience might look like showing up to worship even when your heart hurts. It might mean praying even when you don't have the right words. It might mean believing for something you haven't seen yet. It could look like taking communion when you still feel broken. Spiritual resilience is choosing to dwell in hope, not because everything's fine, but because you know the one who holds the future. You know, throughout this journey that I've been on, it has been very tempting to let my faith slip at times. And I say that to you not to get you to gasp and wonder, oh my goodness, what is she about to say? But I want to hopefully show you that that is in fact normal. When you walk through a fire like divorce or trauma, and you feel tired and lonely and wondering if anything is ever going to be good again in your life, it can be really hard to feel connected spiritually. And yet, even though that was what I was experiencing, I continued to show up in my faith. You know, there was a time, it was recently, where I was leading worship for a Sunday night service, and I was honestly feeling like a fraud. Because I was spiritually tired, I was emotionally exhausted, I was honestly, I'm just going to put it out there, I was angry about my circumstances, and I wasn't even sure that I had all that much to bring. And yet, that night, more people than ever came up to me to say that worship touched their hearts. Because when we show up, even when we don't feel like it, God meets us in that place. Now, for those of you who are listening to this and thinking, I just don't feel strong, that's just not who I am, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the practice of becoming strong. And in fact, let's start by just talking about that word, practice. Practice means showing up before you're good at something. Anyone who has learned a new sport or some type of artistic endeavor knows that, it takes practice to get good, right? Practice means repeating something even when it feels awkward. Practice means small, consistent effort over time, not perfection. So the same way that we train our bodies is how we train our brains. In neuroscience, there is something called experience-dependent plasticity. It refers to the brain's ability to change and reorganize itself in response to unique experiences, learning, environmental inputs over the course of your lifetime. So, that means we can give ourselves these new experiences, and through that we will eventually change our wiring. And this is so important in our search for resilience, because that means if we practice resilience, even if it's not what we are naturally accustomed to, we can wire our brains for resilience. And I hear you right now, you're saying, Mel, how do I practice resilience? Let's look at a few ways. What does it look like to practice resilience? Well, you could try naming your emotions instead of stuffing them. Something happens and you actually name it out loud if you are by yourself or, even just in your head if you're in a group. I feel insecure right now. I feel sad, whatever it is. Try breathing through panic instead of spiraling. Try asking for help instead of isolating. Try choosing one next step instead of just shutting down. Try creating structure when everything feels chaotic. And try to actively return to joy. Don't just wait for it to appear. And if you need a little bit of help in that area and you're not sure how to return to joy, please check out my episode with Charlie Engelman. We talk all about the practice of joy. So these are some small things, but small things are sacred when repeated. And by the way, trauma does not break your ability to be resilient. It actually reveals where the healing needs to happen. It shows us the exact areas that the brain is asking for support, and that is good news because it means we can do something about it. So, you've heard me talk a lot about journaling on this podcast, and I will say that starting a gratitude journal when I was in the throes of my divorce was honestly one of the best things that I could have done, and I have not done it perfectly. There are plenty of days where I have just flat out missed filling out my journal. And I'll be honest, there are days where I have filled out my journal a bit passive-aggressively because I'm just in a mood. But most of the time, I fill out my journal with 1 to 5 things that I'm genuinely grateful for, even when my life is falling apart and when things have not gone how I would have hoped. Wiring my brain to look for those good things, to look for things that I could be grateful for, instead of looking for, bitterness, or I shouldn't say looking for it, just allowing bitterness or sadness to creep in. By looking for those good things to be grateful for instead has rewired me for more resilience. And like I said, I do not do this perfectly all the time, but gratitude is becoming more of who I am because I'm giving myself the opportunity to do that through this new activity. Okay, so deep breath before this next section here. Let's pause here and name something that I think is so important that we talk about. You ready? You do not have to be okay to be resilient. And I'm going to say that again because I really want you to hear it. You do not have to be okay to be resilient. I know that this world is really geared towards productivity. Even in our deepest moments of pain, people will ask, what are you going to do about it? But resilience is not always about doing something. Sometimes it's being. Sometimes it looks like lying down and crying, saying, I can't do this today, turning off your phone, asking someone to just sit with you, listening to worship music through tears, letting your body rest so your brain can reset. Jesus himself took breaks. He withdrew. He napped on boats. He wept over Jerusalem. He sweat blood in the garden. He was God in the flesh, and he wasn't ashamed of his human limits. So why are we? Some days, resilience means getting back up. Other days, it will mean lying down and just trusting that God is still working in the dark. In my divorce, I went to therapy. I talk about this. There is no shame in needing help. And I am still getting help in the form of coaching and counseling. And again, I say no shame in that. I've taken breaks from activities that I love, but that were too taxing on me in a season when I needed to heal. Just recently, I removed myself from the dating apps yet again. Oh yes, you will hear me say this often, because while some of the experiences that I was having through those apps was probably building some kind of resilience, Some of it was more than what I could handle right now, and I realized I was not in the right place to keep trying. And it's okay. It is okay to say no to things. It is okay to rest, and it is absolutely okay if you are not okay. I also want to make it very clear, if I didn't already, that it is absolutely okay to ask for help. As I said before, when I was going through my divorce, I was in therapy every single week. And now I still get counseling, I still get coaching. So if you need help, please get it. Please find a therapist or a counselor or a coach that you trust. It is not better to try and tough it out on your own when you need help. Please let others help you. There is absolutely no shame in that at all. So, if no one has told you this today, I want you to know you are already doing better than you think. Resilience isn't how fast you heal or how much you accomplish, or how put together you look. It's more about how often you get honest, how often you choose to hope even when the dumpster fires of life are burning all around you. How often do you come back to the table even if you come back crawling? You don't have to be naturally strong. You just have to keep showing up. And here is the beautiful part. Every time you do, your brain rewires, your heart softens, and your faith deepens, and you become someone new. So if you're listening today and you're feeling like a mess, like you're behind or like you're weak, let me lovingly say to you, you are not. You're human, you're healing, you're practicing, and you are doing great. So this week, I want to invite you to do something with me. It is a 7-day resilience practice. Just one thing each day to remind yourself, I'm showing up. So start this whenever you listen to this episode, either the day you listen, the next day, it doesn't matter. It's just a 7-day practice I want you to try. And what you do is you just choose something from this list. You can just pick one thing each day. You can do one thing consistently for 7 days or try a few different things. Here are some of the options. Number 1, write a journal entry titled, What Didn't Break Me? And just list everything out. 2, you can go for a walk for 10 minutes while you listen to either worship music or a calming playlist. Number 3, try texting a friend and saying, hey, I'm not okay, can we talk? Number 4, try reading out loud either Psalm 34 or Romans 5. And lastly, try celebrating a tiny win. And when I say tiny, it can be really tiny, like getting out of bed on a day you didn't feel like it, or not spiraling after a trigger. That's it. One thing a day, no pressure, just practice. You're building something holy here. You're becoming resilient on purpose. So thank you for listening. I love walking through this journey with you. And if you would like more support as you go through your week, I'd like to invite you to receive a 5-day email series. It is free, called Braver Than Before. You can get it at diamondsindumpsterfires.com/braver. It walks you through some additional resilience practices one day at a time. And like I said, it's free. Just want to offer that to you if you need it. I am here to support you, friends. So until next time, keep digging for diamonds, even when the dumpster is still on fire. That's it for now. Thank you so much for listening today. If today's episode hit home and you're ready to build real resilience, I made something just for you. It's called Braver Than Before, a 5-day journey to help you rebuild from hard things with faith, neuroscience, and small, brave steps. You'll get a short daily email, simple practices, and honest encouragement right when you need it most. Grab it for free at diamondsindumpsterfires.com/braver or click the link in the show notes.